My name is Zach Dewhurst, and I'm the owner of PrintFace. In this video, we're going to go over how embroidery works and why you should offer it to your customers. Now, embroidery has improved greatly over the years, as the machine and technology has improved greatly. How embroidery really works, it's a lot like sewing using a sewing machine. Essentially, you have a top needle that comes down with thread and catches a bobbin that then sews a design into a product. Now, a embroidery machine like this is different than your sewing machine in that you can load a design into it, and the machine is then going to lay the stitches in an exact order and density to create that exact design. This machine itself has 15 different colors, and each color has its own needle. So whenever that color is to be sewn, the head of the machine will move over and sew that onto the product. Now, before a design can be sewn, it first must be digitized. Now, digitizing is extremely important to be done well in order to have a nice finished product. Digitizing involves telling the machine where exactly to lay down stitches and how many to lay down. Now, when it comes to digitizing, it's very different than vectorizing in that it cannot be resized once it's been digitized. So you can't take a left chest 3.5 inch size logo and stretch it to be 10 inches for a back and expect it to sew well. It doesn't work like that like it would with a vector. Digitizing requires that each size be digitized to that exact size that it's going to be sewn. And not only that, digitizing requires that if it's going to be on a hat, which is a round product, it be sewn differently than a flat product like a polo, hat, bag, or jacket, for instance, which are all sewn flat. Hats are sewn with a round edge, which means they need to be sewn from the middle out to sew correctly. Now, it's also important to realize that the really, really nice professional hats that you see worn by like the Major League Baseball players, those are actually sewn unconstructed first, meaning that they're actually sewn flat on the first front panels, and then the entire hat is actually sewn together and constructed, making it much easier to sew a finished product. Not only that, you have a bigger sew area on the hat, and you can get very thick three-dimensional sewing. Now, we actually offer 3D sewing onto our hats, which are already constructed. They'll be a little bit more than 1/4 inch raised from the hat. And how we do that is we actually use 3D puff foam. So essentially, while we're sewing, we'll take this foam, we'll attach it to the hat, and then once it's sewn over, it'll actually give it a three-dimensional feel and look. But before we actually sew a hat on using the machine, and after it's been digitized, we first must hoop the product. Now, if we're going to use a hat, we use a different type of hoop. Essentially, again, this round hoop, in which we will take backing, which comes in many different shapes and sizes and thicknesses, put it behind the actual product, hoop the product, and from there, we can actually sew this hat. Now, if we were to actually sew a polo or a bag or a jacket, we would actually use a flat hoop, and depending on the size of the design, we would use a different size hoop. You want to have the design right within the hoop size so you have a nice taut product being pulled and it sews as well as possible. Now again, there are many different types of backing that we use for embroidery. Backing must be used in order to stabilize the thread when it's being sewn, and also to stabilize the thread as it's being washed. If you really think about it, washing clothes is very abusive on a product, and that backing is what really keeps the thread from breaking down through several different washes. A hat, though, for instance, is going to use a tearaway thread which can naturally dissolve, and you're not actually going to have to wash it as much, and that's why we use a lighter backer. Now, in our case, again, our machine has 15 colors. All we have to do is load our product onto the machine, and once it's loaded onto the machine, we just have to designate a few different variables, including the stitch colors that are going to be used to sew the design, the speed, and the stitch density. Once we have all of these variables ready, we essentially hit embroidery, and as you will see, essentially the top needle comes down and is catching the bobbin underneath of this hat, and is sewing the design from there. This design itself has 4,300 stitches and will take 12 minutes to sew. Embroidery is a lot like screen printing, in which the material costs are very minimal, but the setup, or in this case, the amount of time it takes to sew each design, is really what you're paying for. Again, if this design takes 12 minutes to sew, we can only sew around 4.5 hats or polos or bags an hour. So again, it's not exactly a fast process, but it's beautiful when you get the finished product. If you have any questions about how embroidery works, please do not hesitate contacting us. Thank you.